Welcome back to another episode of From the Truck. So this morning I realized that it has been about almost 11 months since I've done a From the Truck episode. The last episode was on, I believe it was April 21st, and I think I called it the baby episode because our daughter, Una, had just been born the week before. And now, today is March 16th, and she is 11 months old today. It's mind-boggling, but it's also mind-boggling to think of sort of everything that has happened in the last 11 months. April 21st, 2020, we were barely into this thing, right? We had only been in a couple of weeks. I had just started a new interim position, and we had what I like to call our first Sunday of suspended worship, right? We did our first virtual worship service. Since that April 21st episode, I have ended my interim ministry at Second Congregational Church in Beverly. But it was interesting for those of you who attend worship services during COVID times. Virtual worship is a very interesting thing. We did a variety of services. We started with Facebook Live, and we went to pre-recorded. And then over the summer, we did several in-person worship services in the parking lot, which was very interesting. And then we went back inside and we did some Facebook Live streaming services with the brand new video equipment that we had. But it was interesting from a community perspective that, community grew. I think there were more people that tuned in during the week, even after the service had aired, and had been part of the community. So community does exist in a virtual sense. And I hope churches who have done virtual worship since this has begun will continue a virtual worship when and if this ever ends. So, like I said, I started and ended a ministry within this period of time. I am back working as a hospice chaplain. In fact, I'm sitting right now outside of our office. I have to go in and do some paperwork and then see some patients this afternoon. But I'm back working as a hospice chaplain, and I've entered a period of discernment, which I will share more. I'll share more about later on. If you've watched this program for any length of time, you know that in 2004 I was ordained in the Romanian Orthodox Church, which I left 12 years later, about 2015, I think it was, and entered into the United Church of Christ, where I served since then until this most recent interim period in Beverly at Second Congregational Church. But now I've entered this period of discernment. I have this pull from God to explore possibilities by becoming a priest in the Episcopal Church. So that period of discernment has begun. Part of that discernment was to end my ministry and not function as a minister, but not be the pastor of a congregation, not be the spiritual leader of a congregation. So I'm still an ordained person, and I am a minister and ministering in hospice now. So ministry has changed. I don't exercise pastoral leadership. Well, I guess in some sense I do. So I'm inviting you along on that journey with me. And from time to time, so I say from time to time, every time I restart this, I always say, well, we're going to get better, we're going to do it, and then it never sort of happens. So I'm not going to say that this time, and maybe it will happen. I've tried a variety of things. So let's see what else has happened since then. Oh, yes, I started and ended a radio program, Faith in America, which I had hoped to transition to a podcast, but it never sort of really materialized after that. It was a great run. It was about 8 months on a couple of local radio stations, and it was really a good time. It was exciting. But for any of you who do things like this on a regular basis, you know how much work is involved. And it got to a point where it was work, and I wanted it to be enjoyable. It was still enjoyable in a sense, but it was becoming more work than it was becoming an enjoyment. So I ended that part. Again, I mentioned our daughter was born, and she's 11 months old today. So there's all of that daddy parenting stuff to get used to, which I never believed at my age and stage of life that I would be dealing with any of those things. I have become very well reacquainted with Sesame Street, and acquainted with, and again, I can't believe I'm even saying this, acquainted with the Teletubbies. I know, but it is her favorite program. And so we're planning for her first birthday, and of course the theme will be Teletubbies. So there's that. The things we do for our children, right? But I'm enjoying it. She is an enormous amount of fun. Watching her just these last 11 months has been amazing. I think when we put her in her crib at night and she gets up the next morning, I feel like she has grown. She's just grown overnight, which I find a very interesting thing to sort of happen. But so like so many of you, there's been a lot of losses in this time of COVID. There's for me, there was the loss of the end of one ministry and the start of another. I have lost several friends, several close friends, to COVID or COVID-related issues over the last few months. One very recently, my very dear friend Joe passed. Not really sure, but could be COVID-related. And I had the very, very great honor of traveling to Scranton, Pennsylvania last week and officiated his funeral with several other clergy members. So it was sad to see happen. Joe was a very good friend. If you follow my blog, I wrote a tribute there for Joe and our relationship. I guess, I was talking before about virtual worship, and my relationship with Joe began virtually. I met Joe on Facebook shortly after I was ordained in 2004. I think we both commented on a post, and from there this friendship sort of just evolved, and we hadn't met in person until about, I think it was about a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years ago now in Washington, D.C. We met physically face to face for the first time. But our friendship sort of grew and matured virtually for all of that time. And, so it is possible to have virtual relationships and virtual community. I'm not saying it is ever going to replace in person, and I hope we're able to get back to some semblance of whatever normal is going to be and in-person worship. But in the meantime, we have each other in these forms. But I am very grateful to Joe for his friendship over all of those years. But yeah, it's funny to think about it that we never really met in person until just very, very recently, and had been friends for 12 or more years before we actually physically met in person. But there's a lot of grief that happens in this time, but there's joys too. I mean, again, I mentioned the birth of our daughter in the midst of all of this. We were, just about a month into COVID when she was born, and kind of how weird that was to go into the hospital and not being able to leave until we left to take her home. We were in the hospital almost a week. And how very few family members were able to see her initially, or see her only through the glass front door of our house. And now, sort of all of that is starting to change as we emerge from behind this. I'm happy to report I am fully vaccinated. I had both shots. I would encourage you to get yourself vaccinated. It's a little frightening. I'll be honest to say that when I went for the second shot, I was very nervous. I think I was more nervous about the side effects than I was about anything else. I had heard some horror stories about what had happened. But I can tell you that it is well worth it. I still wear a mask. I still will continue to wear a mask. I'm required to wear a mask when I see patients in hospice, but I will continue to wear a mask whenever I'm out and not able to stay 6 feet away from other people, because I just think it's the responsible thing to do. But I would encourage you to get yourself on the list, and as soon as you're eligible to be vaccinated. If you have religious or spiritual questions, I mean, you can email me if you want. Talk to your spiritual father, spiritual mother, spiritual director, your priest, your pastor, your rabbi, your imam, whoever it is, and talk about those religious objections. I think asking questions is always good. But I think we have a moral imperative that outweighs anything else to help to stop the spread of this thing. Far too many have died. And I'm not going to get into all the political stuff, but far too many people have died from this, and here's our opportunity to help to stop it. So get vaccinated, keep wearing your mask, wash your hands, use the sanitizer. I keep this in the car with me. I have more in the back in my hospice kit. Just do it, because it's the only way we're going to end this thing. And, hopefully by this summer, we'll be far enough on the other side of it that we can start getting back to a little bit of normalcy. Well, here we are. We're in the throes of Lent. We've just passed the 4th week. So we are, I guess, more than halfway to Easter. If you're interested, I'm doing some Wednesday evening prayer and meditation, reflection, I guess is a better word, at 7 o'clock on Wednesday nights, and I'll put a link down below in the notes of this video to where you can get more information about that. It's short. It's just about a half an hour. I'm using evening prayer from the Book of Common Prayer of the Episcopal Church, and just sort of having Lenten reflections. And this week, tomorrow, Wednesday, is St. Patrick's Day, so I'll be talking a little bit about the wisdom of St. Patrick. So tune in if you'd like. It's a small group, but it's been great. I guess I want to go back, just as I'm starting to close, about virtual services and how important they have been for me. I've discovered several places where I can tune in for virtual morning and evening prayer, and one of my favorite is from Canterbury Cathedral in England. The dean there, Robert, does a very fantastic job. Very fantastic, that didn't sound right. Does a fantastic job with morning prayer, and he's there 7 days a week, normally outside in all kinds. He was out in a snowstorm, rain. He gets himself into these places with the variety of animals that they have there, but it's a great half hour of just a meditative time, and he does a little reflection, and he calls it, and others have called it, the garden community, because he's in the garden there at Canterbury Cathedral. So you can find it on YouTube, but there's others as well on Facebook and other places, and perhaps your church is doing something. So those things have been sort of bedrocks for me and helped me get through all of this, navigating a congregation during all of this, and now moving into hospice work, which is challenging under normal circumstances, to add it to all of this. Well, all right, I just wanted to jump on here for the annual From the Truck episode. Like I said, I'm not going to say I'm going to try to keep this going, but who knows? We'll see. But I did want to jump on and say hello and kind of bring you up to date on some things. There's a bunch of other videos here on the channel. There's some sermons, there's some worship services, some other things I'm involved in. If you like, subscribe to my channel and ding the little bell so you get notified when things are coming. I'll put links below to my blog and my Facebook page and some of the other things that I'm involved in, but I'm sort of in all all social media avenues, I guess: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So lately I've been pretty active on Twitter, so you can. But I'll put all those links down in the notes. So thanks for tuning back in, and look forward to another episode of From the Truck. See you next time.